Welcome into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for the Week 15 Waiver Wire Show. That's right, folks. You made it here to the playoffs or some sort of after regular season gameage. Maybe some of you, the playoffs have already started. So, very important time of the year. And as a reminder, this video is really just a supplement in case you can't make it to me being live tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually just live for about an hour and a half on Tuesdays. Not super available, but I make sure to be available for at least a little while. So come check that out here on YouTube. As far as what you're seeing on the screen is at least most injuries catch up on kind of the likelihood of them playing this week, as well as some of the new injuries that we'll cover. I do want to point out a couple of things. Hollywood Brown, he has 1 week left before he can return to Kansas City. Week 16 is the expected return for Hollywood Brown. I don't know how anxious I am to add him because you're probably not going to trust him on week 16. And then week 17, the only reason you would trust him is if he goes off in week 16. So I don't think there's too much here for, fantasy football purposes. But I do want to point it out. Somebody that if you have some faith or whatever, you could stash him. George Pickens, I would not have too much trust in him playing this week. I would anticipate he'll probably be missing one more week with that hamstring, given when it happened during the week. But we'll see on that. Ken Walker, I really have no clue on, and Breece Hall, I am doubtful, but he is, technically kind of day-to-day questionable at this point in time with his injury. And that brings us to the new injuries here. Aiden O'Connell's season is over with his knee injury, unfortunately. Jonathan Brooks' season looks to be over. Derek Carr's non-throwing hand has a fracture in his non-throwing hand. So the head coach said it's possible that he could play even without practicing this week. So I guess they'll just see where things go, but it's also possibly a multi-week injury. The season could be over. I think there are going to be discussions that will be had throughout the week, and obviously some testing to see what he can and cannot do before they kind of make their decisions there in New Orleans. Isaac Grendo sprained his ankle. Typically, that's at least a 2-week time period where guys are missing, and obviously can be more, and it can be less, but typically you anticipate once again, at a bare minimum, like a week is pretty normal. Demarcus Robinson had an AC sprain, shoulder injury, 1 week. Minimum could be longer, but that's kind of the normal is 1 week. Will Dissly, shoulder, multi-week thing. Bucky Irving had his back tightened up on him. They said they'll see if they can't loosen it this week. So they're definitely not like saying, oh yeah, he'll be fine, he's coming, and he's coming back, he'll be ready to play by the end of the weekend. So we'll see on that as well. And of course, these all have impacts on fantasy football, some of them on the waiver wire. But before we get to the main impacts that we will see on the waiver wire, we got to talk some quarterbacks here. Some quarterback options that you have this week, I think, begins with Aaron Rodgers, and I hope you have your quarterback situation otherwise figured out. These are all options that are less, your waiver wire might be different, and that's part of why I go live tonight, right? But these are guys that are less than 50% owned on ESPN. That's my threshold before I'm willing to consider a guy for this list, just so that way the list isn't too useless for a lot of you. So, once again, Aaron Rodgers available in a lot of leagues. Jacksonville, Los Angeles Rams over the next 2 weeks. We just saw probably his best game of the season-ish, but at least in terms of fantasy, definitely, more than 300 yards for the first time in like a couple of years. He didn't play football last year, but since I think 2021, you recall his last year in Green Bay, had all rookies, so there wasn't a whole lot of successful passing going on that year either. Other than that, Jameis Winston and Bryce Young, I think, are other options here looking forward as well. All these highlighted in green here are good matchups to, some of the best matchups, but all of them are definitely in that upper tier of being a good matchup for quarterbacks. Bryce Young, just prior to last week, plays against a really tough defense, probably the defense that's playing the best in the league. Still got like 14 or 12 plus fantasy points, played well against them. So that's promising going up against much easier matchups going forward. And like I was about to say, just a few weeks back, Bryce Young put up 20-something points on Tampa Bay, who he'll be seeing again soon. So, we don't feel too comfortable with it, but hey, there's an option. That's going to bring us on to the running backs, and there is quite the list here. We've got Sincere McCormick, really running well. There wasn't much of a question that he ran well in a game, but he's continued to do it. Did it against a really tough opponent at this point. He's a bit opponent agnostic. We'll trust him. We'll trust that the team trusts him at this point. So I think that you can roll him on out there if you are in trouble at your running back position. Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis, really tough to pick which one would be better to have, to be honest. But both of them solid options if they're still available on your waiver wire. Patrick Taylor. Going to have two tough matchups coming up at Miami. You like the offense. You like the rushing offense that he's on specifically. We've seen many guys over the years, no-namers even, come up and do well. And from Green Bay, Patrick Taylor is with the Green Bay Packers. He's a fine running back. There is definitely nothing wrong with him. Put him in a good system and everything. And he can definitely give you some return on that. But I am a little bit afraid of the schedule and his lack of, next levelness. Just kind of a down in and down out kind of back guy. Nothing special about Patrick Taylor either. But there's a reason he still has a job in the league. Tank Bigsby, we've seen him do this a couple times this season, and you really, I think, need games where Jacksonville is close or in a leading situation to get it from your money's worth from Tank Bigsby. So I'm a little bit nervous of how repeatable last week is, because once again we have seen it a couple of times throughout the season, and then we've seen him go for 0 the next week. So I think the good part of it is look at the schedule: New York Jets, Las Vegas, Tennessee. You could see them being in all of these games quite potentially, and so maybe Tank Bigsby finishes strong. Maybe they've finally made the switch just straight up to Tank Bigsby. Trust who you want to trust throughout the week on what people are saying about Tank Bigsby. Definitely a fine option to give a shot at, but I'd rather not rely on it if I can avoid it. Still should be rostered. And then that brings us to the wide receivers. These are all on a lower tier than the running backs, really. The running backs are the cream of the crop this week, as they most often are. This year, it's been rough getting new running backs coming out. That's a good thing, but, not always for fantasy teams. So for the wide receivers, Devon Vele, Adam Thielen, Cedric Tillman coming up. This is basically a repeat of my list from last week with a couple of guys removed from it. So I still like Cedric Tillman for week 16-17 if he's going to be coming back. He's still in concussion protocol as of Monday, December 9th. The impending return of Jalen Coker still makes me a little bit nervous about Adam Thielen and his usage or role on the team, and how that might start to get switched around, start to get funky, start to share some time with Jalen Coker if or when he comes back. He was very close to coming back last week, and so I anticipate he will be coming back. So that's just my concern with him, but otherwise I like him. And Devon Vele, that's kind of why he's above Adam Thielen. We don't have anybody coming in taking part of Devon Vele's role or anything like that. That's going to bring us on to the tight ends. Pat Freiermuth, people have dropped him. He is available out there. I almost put him on this list last week, but I didn't quite. But he continues to come through one way or the other, so that's always good. I don't really think there's anybody you should be spending. You got to need help at tight end, and if you do, then pick up Pat Freiermuth. I would say pick up Juwan Johnson, but with the injury to Derek Carr's non-throwing hand, but still his potentially not playing, I don't know how much I trust Juwan Johnson with the backup there in I can't think of his name right off the top of my head, but rookie didn't do too great earlier on in the season with some opportunities there. So we got a little, a deeper league or something, Juwan Johnson, maybe worth on the back end of your roster, but I'd rather hold on to 2 defenses and stuff like that this time of the year than having a Juwan Johnson on the back end of my roster, which brings us to the DST streamers this week. Baltimore Ravens, Green Bay Packers are my top 2 streamers of the week, but more than all of that, Buffalo Bills, weeks 16 and 17 coming up. New England, New York Jets to finish off the season. New York Jets are starting to play a little bit better, but that's a pretty nice schedule there. So there we go. We'll put the running backs back at the center of the screen as I say goodbye to you. I appreciate you very much. Once again, this is supposed to be a quicker video, not going into too much detail. If you have further questions, you have different guys on your waiver wire that you're curious about that I didn't talk about at all, and, where do they stack against these guys, just come visit me tonight. And don't forget that I also go live Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Saturday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Saturday. Thursday was actually 6:30, an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes prior to kickoff. And then Sunday mornings, 2 hours and 45. I almost went 3 hours early this last Sunday. So as the year comes to a close here, I just keep getting earlier and earlier on Sundays. So thank you very, very much once again for tuning on in. I appreciate you all. Like, comment, subscribe, do the cool things. They're appreciated. But most of all, come visit me live. Peace out.